Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of Drunk Knitting. I, of course, have Kyle Cassidy here, and our guest today is Claire LaZebnik. I'm very happy to have you join us. Do a quick cheers to that.
So Claire is the author of a book called Knitting Under the Influence, which when I read it, I was like, why isn't she on our podcast? Because that's kind of like what our podcast is about. And Claire wrote that book a while ago, but it's about three women who knit and bond together while drinking a lot of alcohol and going on a certain number of dates with a bunch of scurrilous men.
That's a good description. A true story. There were four women originally in the original draft. It was a group of four because, you know, movies and books and TV shows always have groups of four women. And one of them met an untimely demise and got axed from the book before it was published.
Was it a knitting accident?
Yes, it was a knitting accident. She fell on her own needles and vanished from the pages.
She got frogged.
So, like, can you tell? I know that like this is old news to you because you have many other books since then. But as somebody who's, you know, interested in writing and interested in authors and stuff, can you tell us about like how your book came to be and like what started you doing it? How did you write it? You know, where did you come up with the plot? And
oh man, you are asking me to dig way deep because it is a long time ago. I had already written one novel, and it was, you know, I thought it was the great American novel, and the publishers and reviewers and readers all decided it was chick lit, which was a big term back then. It's fallen from favor, but it was a big term back then. I was a little shocked to find myself sort of put in that category. And then I think there was a little part of me that was like, okay, fine. If I'm gonna be in that genre, I'll really embrace it. And so I wrote this book a little more, I hate to say cynically, but maybe a little more cynically, was sort of the idea of like lots of romance and lots of, you know, sort of hip people doing hip things, you know, of its time again. But I still got in some of my favorite things, like there's an autism storyline. I have a son with autism, so I try to include characters with autism in almost everything I write. And my own thoughts about things like scientific experimentation and sort of like the good and the bad and the, you know, so I tried to sneak a few things in there that meant something to me. The funniest thing about it is that if you remember, one of the characters is one of triplets, and two of her sisters are identical twins, and she's the outsider. And that was actually based, I've co-authored two books about autism, nonfiction books about autism with a woman who's a really great, brilliant professor and clinician. She's up at Stanford, and she does amazing work with autism. And she is one of triplets, born in Santa Barbara many years ago. And in fact, they used to have a big party, and a front page of the Santa Barbara newspaper would every year on their birthdays. It was such a big event in this town as it was back then. And she and one of her sisters are identical twins, and the third triplet looks very different. And I just, it was such a weird detail that I thought, well, what would that be like? Like, how would that feel to grow up from, you know, from birth, being this slight, you know, being part of a group, but also being outside of the group. So that was the inspiration for that.
And in your book, the two are movie stars too, because they're identical. And the other one, who is, you know, at least as talented, is just, because she's not identical, is put on the outside.
Yeah, it's such a big thing in LA. You know, if you have cute identical twins, then from basically birth until, you know, very young childhood, they can work nonstop because of child labor laws. It just, people love identical twins, like Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen. I mean, that's the classic story.
That was definitely who I was thinking of when I was reading the book.
Yeah. And actually, there was another family, believe it or not. One of my kids did like a My Gym class with triplets who, again, were like that, two identical, one different. And the two identical ones were already being scouted, and I think were in some commercials and things. So it was actually, I've seen it play out. So it was fun to write about that.
So what made you decide to have knitting be like the central part of the relationship of these three women in your book?
Okay, so this does sound cynical, because I wanted something to unify them, something to bring them together, and something that felt just kind of right. And it was my husband who said, who's also a writer. I mentioned he writes for the animated show The Simpsons, and he was the one who said, because he knows I love to knit, and he said, what if they all knit together? I taught myself to knit when I was in high school, I think, and I knitted all through college, and ever since then, I taught myself out of a book. So he just had spent, we've been married since 1989, and he had just spent so much time watching me knit that it came to him before it came to me, and it was perfect. It was exactly what I wanted.
That's so cool. And it's nice that you are a knitter, because I've read books and seen shows before where people try to incorporate knitting and it's wrong.
And the book did well in general. I do remember someone having an issue with some either that there wasn't I think that there wasn't enough knitting in it. I think
Okay.
I do remember some knitter saying that she felt she had been sold, bait and switch kind of a thing. And I felt guilty. I should have had more knitting.
Well, so what are you working on now? What are your most recent books? I know you have a whole string of them.
I do. I've written 12 novels. I've had 12 novels published, and these 2 books I co-authored about autism. My most recently published book is called Things I Should Have Known. It's a YA book featuring 2 sisters, one of whom has autism. The other one's starting to think about college and realizes her sister's very dependent on her, and she has to, and she wants to make sure that she will have her sister will have a social life and not be sad when she leaves. So she sets to work to sort of arrange for her sister to have the kind of social life she feels she wants, but she makes some mistakes along the way, and so that I was very proud of. I'm very happy with that novel. And I have a couple things that I'm trying to sell, including another book about autism with the same co-author. But to be honest, the last few years, I've mostly been doing political stuff. I've been writing a little less. Actually, the day after the 2016 election, I spent knitting. I was catatonic in Iraq, and I spent the entire day working on an Afghan, and it helped.
My mom, right after the election, knit a giant American flag, but with the woman's fist in where the stars go.
Love that.
That was her post 2016 knitting project. We took it to the Women's March. It was pretty fun.
Oh, I love that. That's so cool. I don't think I had the wherewithal to even do anything more. I was just knitting rows of different colors. Have to get through the days.
Became an integral part of all of those marches in 2016 too, and how it became like a unifying totem, I guess, for so many people, and an activity that brought people together.
I made a bunch of pussy hats, or whatever they called them. Pussy hats, was that what we called them? Back in 2016, I made one for myself, but I made a bunch for other people who didn't know how to knit. Mm-hmm. So that's a good point. I hadn't even thought of that.
Yeah, we handed out a bunch of them at the Women's March too. My mom knit so many. And I think it was just a really cool thing. Like the way the idea started was, a woman started making them because she couldn't go to the Women's March. So she wanted kind of a way to be there and to make a good activity also for senior women who couldn't go. And so you had all these like old grandmas in nursing homes. And, I can just imagine like the aides and stuff asking them, what are you knitting? Pussy hat.
No, it's really moving. And it's also that thing with sort of reclaiming something, in that I think, there's a sort of, knitting is kind of, old fashioned and maybe kind of feminine. And I think there's something about just sort of reclaiming it and saying, no, it's neither of those things. It's very much alive, and anyone can do it. And it's very vital. It's, there are a lot of great things you can do with it. Which I like reclaiming things that other people want to put in a box.
One of the things that we've been very interested in this book about Icelandic sweaters is the generational aspect of Icelandic knitters who, sweaters are knitted by typically mothers and grandmothers who, give them to families. And there's an intergenerational aspect of knitting itself. And we interviewed one knitter who'd learned to knit from her grandmother and her aunts, and they all sat around and, circle and told stories and bonded over this this thing. And it sounds like that's exactly the sort of thing that was going on in 2016 too.
Yeah. No, I think it really is. And I think actually during the pandemic too, that there's been this, again, return to things that, I started baking my own bread even before. I have to say, I started the sourdough thing before anyone else. I want everyone to know that I started it well before COVID, but so many people I know who, are baking their own bread. I made my own kimchi last week. I thought, wow, this is month 8, or month 9 or what. I've lost track, but whatever it is, there, and knitting is, I think, one of those skills or crafts or however you categorize it that has come, that people are finding again.
It's funny because we talk about like pandemic knitting, and I always tell people, I'm like, knitting is the most relaxing and most stressful thing you can ever do in your life. Like when it's going well, it's just soothing and calm. When it goes bad, then you get mad at it.
Yeah.
But it really is like something that kind of helps distract you from this,
Yes.
life right now. And it's, it's a craft, it's a skill. It's, the post-apocalyptic survival. Bake bread, make sweaters, you're good to go.
Yeah, I'd like to figure out how to wire things for electricity. I feel like I should know that before we head into the apocalypse, but so far I haven't learned that one.
You'll also need a generator.
Yeah, you need a source for the see, I wasn't even thinking that. I was just thinking if I could put some wires together, I'd create electricity. Doesn't work that way, does it?
So were the knitting projects in Knitting Under the Influence things that you had made? Because they're very specific, the things that people are working on in there.
We talked about the boyfriend briefly in email, the boyfriend curse, and that is true. I made a really nice sweater. I thought it was really nice for a boyfriend, and then we broke up, and I went through this torture of, can I ask for it back? I guess I can. It was a gift. You can't ask for gifts back, but I also knew he would never wear it again. Mm-hmm. That he would stuff it into a drawer. Some future girlfriend or wife would find it and they get rid of it. And it was really nice. I was like, oh, but there's nothing you can do. You have to say goodbye to those.
So this curse of the boyfriend sweater is something that Joan is kind of obsessed about. I'll let her talk about.
Yeah, I'd like to hear your take on it.
No, I am. And I try to tell Kyle, I'm like, it's a real thing. Everybody who starts knitting either hears about it or experiences it. I never had it happen because I never knit a boyfriend a sweater, but my husband, like when I first started knitting, I made him socks. And I knew that he loved me because he wore them. And I mean, they were neon yellow. One's like 2 inches bigger than the other. I didn't really know how to do the toe, so it's just a mess. And yeah, like I always think it's so neat that like, it's the first thing you want to do because you want to love somebody, right? And knitting something for somebody is an act of love. Like you don't knit it and go like, I really don't like doing this and I don't like this person. You make this thing and you're thinking about them while you're making it. And then you give it to them. And like when they reject it in any way,
yeah,
by basically not wearing it 24/7, you just feel hurt. So like, I think that's a big part of the boyfriend sweater where, if you make something for somebody and they don't show the appreciation that you put into it, like if they don't give you that back, then it kills the relationship.
And this is an integral part of your book too. And in fact, when you mentioned the curse of the boyfriend sweater, and I texted Joan right away, and I was like, I'm reading this book. It's got your curse thing in it.
Yep, I mean it was based on a real thing that was agonizing to me because I actually stopped making sweaters. No, I never make sweaters anymore. I just found that it was just so challenging that ultimately I think I put it became too big a deal. Whereas I make blankets all the time in Afghans. The back and forth is just so much easier for me. Plus I can do it mindlessly. I can drop it and pick it up. Whereas I find sweaters you have to sort of stay on top of. But I make a lot of blankets for my kids who are all grown now. And I completely agree. Like it's making it is an act of love. And I think for them, accepting them from me is an act of love. So I think it goes both ways. I think they're very kind to keep taking these blankets and scarves, lots of scarves.
It seems to me that the sweater is the marathon of knitting. Like at some point you have to do one, but it takes an awful lot of time, concentration, and effort. So I'm a little trepidatious, but I'm anxious also to
I'll say though, as somebody who's knit a lot of sweaters, the Icelandic sweater is so easy compared to others.
Why is that?
Well, you don't seam anything. It's knit in one piece. So you knit the whole thing, you go up to here, then you knit the sleeves, and then you join the sleeves and knit the sleeves into it. The only part that's at all complicated is the color work on the yoke. But it's just the first part is
round. Is the bottom part's a tube?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I could do that.
Yeah.
Because I'm not good at, and my sewing skills are really bad, and that's part of the problem. I'm bad at joining.
Yeah, there's no sewing unless you do like a cardigan where you have to steek it, and cut it, and then yeah, but you knit it in one piece. The only difficult part is the color work, and once you get the hang of that, it's super easy.
Oh, I'll try that.
We might have just sold a book, Joan.
Yeah, you totally just sold a book. I want all your books because I'm the geek, and I mean you have like all my favorite people and characters and movies. It's just all so good. Have you ever done a Simpsons design? Anything for the Simpsons?
I haven't, but now my brain's working.
I wouldn't tell their legal department, so don't worry. The people who my husband will just say, oh yeah, today I met so and so. I mean, now because of COVID, it's all he'll record people. So he'll say, I was just on I was just recording Werner Herzog or someone like that. And half the time I'll hear it coming out of, a room in our house. I'll hear, I'll walk by and Lisa Simpson is, talking. So it's really weird, but it's fun. And he has met just insane people that I'm very jealous of.
Well, I think I'm very jealous that you've met Lisa Simpson, and you probably go to cocktail parties with Lisa Simpson and Yeardley Smith and all those. Like, to me, they're just voices, but to you, they're faces too, I guess.
Very much so. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, if COVID ever ends and either of you's in LA, come to a read, because it is fun to see the actors doing the voices. It's kind of nutty to see these, actors of a certain age embodying these kids and just, talking to themselves in different voices. You'll have a scene where you'll hear Dan Castellaneta, who's Homer, also doing his father, and having a conversation with his father, and he's just bouncing back and forth, and he's phenomenally gifted, and it's really fun.
That's so awesome. I love it.
Do
you have a home base where people can find all of your books and whatnot?
I have a Twitter account, which is just Claire LaZebnik. I'm on Facebook, Claire LaZebnik author. I think I have an Amazon author page. I have a Goodreads author page. So all those places you can find it. Like I said, my most recent novel is Things I Should Have Known. And I really am very proud of that one. It's written for teens, but older people could definitely read it.
We'll help you out and put some links right down there in the comments or in the info on the video. So people will be able to find you on Twitter, Facebook, and various other places.
Oh, thank you.
I'm sure our watchers will love to find you online and check out all of your books, not just Knitting Under the Influence. Fantastic. Well, Claire, it was so much fun to talk to you.
A pleasure.
I love, loving your book so far. I'm going to look up all your other books as well, and I hope everybody else does too. It's so great to talk to a knitter.
I'm so grateful there's knitting in my life, but I want to look at your books, and now I want to try Icelandic sweaters. You really should. They're so much fun. When the book comes out, we'll send you one. I think you're going to love it. I will absolutely love it. So thank you for having me. This was really,
Yeah.
really fun.
It was fate when I looked through the library for books on knitting. Yours were right on the top. So
Oh, that's nice to hear. I'm glad it's still out and about.
and it
Prodigal child.
fits right in here. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank
Claire.
you. Bye. Nice to meet you guys.
Bye.
You too.